Alright, so after installing our Windows Server 2019 for our additional domain controller, it's time to install Active Directory and make this as a additional domain. So in order to do that, what are we going to do is we're going to follow the same steps which we did in our primary domain controller. Add, remove roles, and it's just loading, so we will give it a second. Okay. Um, Press next here. It's a role-based installation. We are installing this in our domain controller 02. Press next here. What are we installing? We are installing Active Directory domain services, and we will add all those directory services tools that are required. Press next. No features required here. Press next and press install. So this will install the Active Directory tools for us, and then we will promote it to the domain controller through the same console. So the installation is now complete, and same thing, promote this server to a domain controller is what we are going to choose. And what do you think? What should we choose this time? Should we choose add a new forest, add a new domain to an existing forest, or should we choose add a domain controller to an existing domain? If you're thinking the first one, then you are right, because we are going to add a domain to an existing domain, which is the forest that we created for kd.local. So we will choose the first option, and that will make it as an additional domain controller for us. Alright, so add an existing domain. You can simply click on select, and then it will prompt for password. So we have to give a password because this is a server that is a standalone. It's not yet joined to the domain, and it needs the credentials to actually retrieve that domain in the forest. So we have to put the password in order to authenticate. It's taking too much time, so I'll cancel this and I'll type kd.local here, and simply in here it says supply the credentials, so I'll change this, and we have to provide the kd.local slash administrator and then the password. Um, so I'll press OK here, and then it should actually go and detect it. I think the very first yeah, so basically kd.local, and it was not retrieving, and looks like it was looking into this server, so we had to type kd.local. Alright, so you can see this is the next step, and if you remember, the first server was global catalog server and we were not able to change it, but here we are able to change it since we can install we need or we must install one global catalog server in our domain. DNS, we will make sure we have DNS. It's always good to have DNS where you have Active Directory. So for the name resolution, unless it is your business requirement not to have any. So I'll put the restore mode password here, and then you can see that this is our site name. So Active Directory, when you create Active Directory and you have different subnets, you can have different sites. For example, for New York, you have different subnet. For San Francisco, you have different subnet, so you can consider them different sites, and then in order to have replication with them, in order to have synchronization with them, you need to have different site names for them and configure Active Directory site and services for that. Alright, so we are not going to make a read-only domain controller. We will simply use this as a read-write domain. I'll press next, and then same delegation error, and um, specify install from media option. So we are not gonna install from media. Replicate from any domain controller you can choose, or you can choose your primary domain controller so that it will replicate, it will go and contact this domain controller and say, hey, I'm installing myself as a additional domain controller, and the person or the administrator who did install with this credential wants me to come and replicate things from you, so that can you please give me all the objects, users, passwords, everything that you have stored so that I can replicate it in my database too. And we will have a replication, long-term replication configured, and I'll always come to you and you can get things from me too when it's created on my side. So let's configure synchronization or replication between each other. So you can choose that. You can choose any domain controller, which is better, because if you choose one and it's again down, you will have problems. Same thing, database, we can configure this as DB, just to make it separate and make sure that we have a good structure for our folders for logs and databases. Summary in here, view script for automation. If you remember, press next, and then it will check for prerequisites and then let us know if we can actually proceed with installation or not. Alright, looks like it's green, so press install and then it will do the installation and a restart will happen, and then we will be able to use this as a additional domain controller. Alright, now it's going to sign out and restart our operating system. The server is now restarting. Let me bring up our primary domain controller here too so that I can demonstrate something for you. So if I go here and type dsa.msc for our Active Directory users and computers, and we will wait for this one to come up. Let me open it from here. Looks like it's not opening. Could be the RAM, because we have less RAM. Sometimes if you have less RAM, you will face things like that. So in Active Directory users and computers, if I come here and let's just create a new user, and I will call it test, not tet, test, next, and let's put a password here. Next, finish. So you see I have a test user created in my primary domain controller. If I go to my additional domain controller now, you can see that I am able to actually see this test user, and you will also see that I should be able to see these other folders that I have, organizational units. So you see I have knowledge train, finance, HR, legal, and other things. If I come here and if I go here, you see the user which we recently created. So it is replicating from additional domain controllers to primary. So that is one good thing about it. So now what you need to do is you need to go to your Windows 10 machine and make sure that the DNS setting on your Windows machines are actually set to both this server and this server. So just in case if this is not available, they can authenticate here, and they can also do load balancing. One come here, one come here, one come here, one come here. So that is how it can be done. So this was just a overview of additional domain controller after the installation. So you see everything is the same. If I create new thing, it will replicate with this one because they're within the same domain.